Time being 6 o'clock, this meeting is called to order. Roll call, please.
Spring,
Here.
Hanson, Herbert,
Here.
Flemish,
Here.
Michael,
Here.
Schultz,
Yes, here.
Williams,
Yes.
Healy,
Here.
Welch.
Madam Chairman, I'd just like to point out it's advertised, but there's a quorum of county commissioners with Commissioner Sherry Lose being present as well. I'd like that reflected in the minutes of the meeting. I
Okay.
don't think anybody else is showing up here. Okay. Yes. It's not working, so I'm sharing his, sorry.
Gotcha. You are hard to hear from out here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know.
All right, so we've got the roll call. I had a request to have an additional public comment period at the beginning of the meeting. So we would limit that to 5 minutes per person and 10 minutes total. Is there anyone signed up for that, or would anybody like to sign up for that at this time? You're planning for the end? Should we just let her speak now? Would you just like to speak now? You can go ahead and come up, and then we'll get on with the rest of the meeting. If you were waiting just to talk to us, then you can get on with your night.
Hi, my name is Ann Horton. I live at 30440 446th Avenue, Bowlin. Josh Johnson is my neighbor, and he is building a CAFO with an expired building permit and an expired conditional use permit. I have photographs taken last week and this week of the construction of the facility, and I want to know what you're going to do to stop it. He's breaking the law. I mean, it's a $200 a day fine, 30 days in jail per day fine, and his wife is a law enforcement officer for the state of South Dakota, and she's allowing this to happen. Now, I know that nobody's getting murdered. It's, it's not armed robbery. It's nothing like that. But the fact remains, it's the law. And if we have laws on the books and they are being disrespected or not followed, why isn't somebody doing something about it? Namely, this commission, the planning commission or the county commission. He should be arrested. He should have to post bond. I mean, if I were living across the road, which I do, and if I were stealing cows and his wife knew about it, wouldn't it be her responsibility to turn me in? Why is he allowed to get away with this? I understand that there's another situation in a different part of the county, but I haven't witnessed it myself. But I drive by that place every day because it's just south of my house, about, I don't even know, a couple 100 yards and across the road. And there it is, being built. So what are you gonna do? I mean, this is a nation of laws, or at least it was at one time. And if nobody's gonna stand up and shut this guy down, then what's the point of having any laws if we're not gonna follow them? And nobody's gonna pay consequences for breaking the law. I wanna know. I'm a taxpayer, so tell me.
You need to make out a complaint form and ask for zoning enforcement. And you can do that through the zoning office. Because he's already been issued a stop order. He's not supposed to be building there.
Okay, well, I know, he's been notified, but my point is this. You know that this is happening, and you're sending him letters? Why hasn't the sheriff been sent out there to arrest him, to shut him down? Why hasn't somebody from the county gone out there and made him take the place apart? I have to write a letter, I have to go to the zoning ordinance, I have to jump through these hoops, and I'm really happy to do all that. Meanwhile, you all know this is happening and you're sitting here going, oh well, first do this, then do this. You know what? I was military police in the Army. If we saw something illegal happening, I didn't go to my boss and say, well, this is happening. Should I arrest him or shouldn't I? I stepped up and I did what I was required to do by law. And nobody's doing that here.
So you've already filled out a complaint?
No, I haven't filled out a complaint, but ma'am, you know this is happening.
Well, I wasn't aware it was happening until you told me.
No, you told me, you just said,
We
he's
said that
already been notified.
He
that he's-
has been notified that he has an expired permit.
I
And
thought
in
he was
order to
notified
rectify-
that he is out of compliance and should not be building a
Well,
CAFO without,
That's what, an expired permit is. You can't build on an expired permit.
well, he is. And what are you doing about it?
Fill out the proper paperwork and talk to the person that needs to take care of it.
Do you want to say anything on this, Rob, or not?
Well, the process is being followed, and it's being followed. There's complaints, it's in the works, it's being followed as the statute or the ordinance allows. The zoning ordinance allows a procedure, and that's what's being followed.
Well, can I make a citizen's arrest because he's breaking the law? Why not?
It's a violation of the zoning ordinance. I'm not aware of any ability for you to act as a citizen to make an arrest.
But if it's an offense that he could actually serve time in jail for and pay a fine for, how is that doesn't rise to the level of me being allowed or somebody being allowed to arrest him and have this stopped?
It's a violation of the zoning ordinance, and then the procedure allows for class 2 misdemeanor fines and jail and costs.
Well, $200 a day fine and 30 days per day, that's a lot of time.
Could be, but the procedure has to be followed.
Ms. Horton, would it be okay if I gave you a call later to discuss this?
Absolutely.
Because this isn't on the part of the agenda anyway, as far as the discussion goes.
Oh, that's true.
Well, thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Yes, thank you for bringing it to our attention.
So, in other words, jump through the hoops, and meanwhile, hold my breath and pray that he doesn't get the hogs in there before the zoning ordinance or the zoning administrator is called out there, or you all rise up and do what you're supposed to do.
We're not zoning enforcement. That would be the zoning office and the state's attorney. I feel
No, don't feel my pain. Don't, please. I don't want your sympathy. I want you to follow the law. I want him to follow the law. I'm required to follow the law. If his wife saw me speeding, she'd pull me over.
Ma'am, would you
There'd be-
mind
there'd
writing
be-
your number down and I will get a hold of it?
This is ridiculous.
I
This
agree.
is ridiculous.
I agree with you. It is ridiculous.
I hope you can read that. Okay, that's my cell phone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda. Approve the minutes from previous meetings, or do we want to go straight to the county commission so that they can speak?
I'd say let's do the minutes.
All right. So,
We should probably go through date by date.
yep, January 15th, 2019. Do we have any additions or corrections to that set of minutes?
From my understanding, I know the board has changed some. We did approve these minutes, but they were lost, I guess you would say, due to somebody going on medical leave. So I know a lot of you weren't on this board when this
Yep.
happened, so I think only those of us who were here should probably vote on them. But
Right.
I guess I'd make a motion to approve the January 15th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting minutes.
Second.
So we want to do a roll call vote since some of us weren't on there, or do you just want to do yays, nays, and abstains?
You're in charge, I guess. Just do all ayes would be fine.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? I'm abstaining. Okay. All right.
Technically,
Alright.
all of us that are here should,
Well, they were
that
here.
came after should be abstaining.
They were there. Okay. So it's still, the yays still win, though? Yes. All right. Motion approved. And that was Dan that made the motion, and he seconded. I didn't notice
And then
if you got that.
Everybody who wasn't on the commission at the time staying?
Yeah, we can't
Right,
vote.
we can't vote because we weren't on the board
I
yet.
think it was just, Zane was on and then Joe and I think that's it.
Yeah,
Okay.
Michael
so that'd
and
be
he's gone.
3 in favor. All right. And next I have April 9th,
February 12th.
February 12th. I'm out of order here.
I'd make a
Oh,
motion
okay.
to approve the February 12th, 2019 Yankton County Planning Commission minutes.
All right.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain? Motion carried. Okay, now we should be up to April.
March
Got a
26th.
March 26th.
Oh, yep, it's on the last page, sorry. March 26th of 2019 minutes.
Make a motion to approve the March 26, 2019 special Yankton County Planning Commission meeting.
I was absent that meeting. So.
Okay, all those in,
Thank
Okay.
you, Zane. We'd be in trouble otherwise.
We ran into it right away.
Yeah.
all right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain?
Aye.
3, 4, 5. Here. All right. Motion approved. Okay. April 9th meeting. Okay, so most of us should have been here for that one.
I'll make a motion that we approve April 9th meeting minutes.
Okay,
I'll second that.
you got that, Jessica, I'm sorry.
You're okay? Good.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
You still got to abstain.
Oh, sorry. All right, still goes. And then on April 25th, there's a spelling error on Mr. Clemish's name. On, well, basically all of the places where his name is. It's supposed to have a C, S-C-H at the end. So if you could just fix that minor little detail there. Any other?
Make a motion to approve with the correction.
All right. We got a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried.
Abstain, yep.
Okay, June 11th.
May 14th.
Oh,
May 14th.
everything is all out of order. Was that on the back?
Looks like they're all different formats, so it's hard to.
Yeah.
Is it on the April?
It's after the second line, but there you got it.
Okay.
Which one?
Here
May
it is.
14th.
Okay, May 14th. Okay, same thing with Klimish, spelled wrong on that one as well.
Also Healy spelled wrong.
And Haley spelled wrong too. Yeah, it's got an E in there. All right, so if we could,
Is this the one that doesn't have the motion to adjourn?
yes, that's the one.
Yes, I'll take credit for the motion to
Okay,
adjourn.
there you go. So if you could add that to the end, that the motion to adjourn was by Dan. Klimish with the SCH on the end for the May 14 minutes. Okay, any other corrections? I would entertain a motion to approve said minutes with the corrections mentioned.
I'll make a motion to approve the May 14th minutes with the corrections noted.
All right,
Second.
all right. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried.
We're still abstaining?
I still abstain, yep.
June 11th?
Okay, June 11th. Do we have any additions or corrections to said minutes? Hearing none, I would
I'd
entertain.
move approval.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Next one is 10-4 minutes on the special meeting. Any additions or corrections to said minutes?
I think we should add make sure the date is added in Yankton County Planning Commission special meeting, because I don't see any of that.
It's the date at the top.
It's just
10-4.
at the
Oh.
end.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
It's on the very top.
Oh, I was reading the wrong page, yep, as I was.
Okay, I don't have a motion to adjourn in a second on that.
Probably on the video.
I mean, that was a,
We could keep that one till next meeting, or
Okay.
if somebody remember who did it, I guess. I don't
I don't remember. I don't remember who it was.
We'll review that one next meeting.
Okay. We'll just do that, because I just noticed that at the end, I did not have that in there. So, we might have to table that one. All right, so I got it right on here. Where's my thing?
Look like we have one in the next one.
Are we on the 10?
We're on 10-8 now.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from 10:08.
Motion to adjourn. It's there.
Okay, yeah, it is. All right. Did we get a second for that?
No.
I'll second it.
Okay.
We're on this one.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried?
A lot of minutes.
Yeah, that's a lot of minutes. Is that it now? It should be. Run them together there. Okay. Okay, do we have any items to be added to the agenda other than the public comment, which was already taken care of? Hearing none, can we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carried. Any conflict of interest declarations from the board?
No.
None.
Nope. All right. Now, finally, oh my goodness, 20 minutes late. Joint Planning and County Commission to discuss future goals is the first item on the agenda.
Madam Chairman, I have the floor.
Yes.
First off, I'd like to introduce everybody to Gary Vetter. He's Director of Development Services and Zoning Administrator and County Commissioner Assistant. He's wearing a lot of hats. He's got a lot of experience. Do you want to take a brief moment and just tell us about yourself? Sure. If you would.
My name is Gary Vetter. I just moved down from Brown County, South Dakota, where I was the Planning and Zoning Director for 6 years and the Commission Assistant for 6+ years. So I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to working with you all.
Welcome.
Thank you.
At the County Commission level, we had discussed several times giving guidance, and we wanted to have this joint meeting so everybody can get on the same page. We at the county level have discussed, and we identified really three main areas we want to work on. Broad overreaching is our accessory structures, Article 5, and then it was a tie between wind and internet. Obviously, we can't tackle all of those at once. We've already started in this board and have given a recommendation for accessory structures, and we're going to touch on that a little bit tonight. But the next one that's causing the most conflict is clearly Article 5, and if we dig into that some more, it's animal feeding operations, CAFOs, Class F and setbacks. And so that was the most common thing from the commission on what we wanted to work first. So we have 3 commissioners here, and so I guess we'll just open it up. If you want to ask a commissioner questions, or Commissioner Loos can't be at most of these meetings, so if she wants to give some guidance, do you want to start there, Sherry, or how did you want to do that? Did you want to kind of give on what you wanted to see, or?
I just say, I think that most of the point of this is to try to get some open dialogue between maybe how things are done at this level, or direction, I guess, so to limit it from getting kicked back. You know, if a change comes to the county commission and we look at it at that level and say, well, we'd like to see this in a different format, or this, that, and the other thing, you know, try to avoid that. Let's try to, you know, let's get everything up front on,
Yeah.
on where we're at, I guess, and we touched on it at the commission level. You know, one of my objectives in every one of these changes, it doesn't matter which ordinance, which article it's reflected on. Some of the things identified were, you know, simplifying processes where we can. I don't expect that we're gonna come through and make every CUP a building permit all of a sudden. There's things that need to come in front of, for review. But where we can, I'd like to simplify processes, clarify verbiage in the ordinance. There's things that are ambiguous in there that have, you know, we debate over and over. It depends on the day of the week or who's here or whatever, and so, you know, cleaning up language to save time for one, and then 2, most importantly probably, is legal issues, and where we see issues with that, you know, where there's ambiguous statements in the ordinance. So those are some of the things that I'm going to be looking for whenever a change comes through. Are we meeting one of these criteria, and maybe we develop more, but I don't know.
You're on to get up.
Yeah.
I'll come to the microphone so it's on. So, and I agree with Joe. I think we've come to discuss a few things that are very open for interpretation. And as I look at Article 5, the first thing I notice is I know Article 5 was amended at some point, and right there after Article 5, it does not say it's ever been amended. So little things like that and sometimes I get a little too nitpicky.
It usually says it up in the corner of the page.
If you will notice, many of the others included under this section, so there's inconsistencies throughout the manual if you read it as a whole. And I think as we go forth, we need to make great effort to get those consistencies across all of the articles. So I'm just going to point that out as one of those minor things that most people wouldn't pay any attention to. But when we come down to a court of law, those are the things that get you in trouble. Permitted uses and conditional uses, I think we need to take a very close look at every one of those. Are they still applicable? Swimming pools, for example. We've had lots of folks question whether we need a CUP for a swimming pool out in the country. And so things like that, as we go through, need to be updated. And that's why I'm kind of a proponent of taking Article 5, reading it front to back, and making those changes as we go through. Number 12, under conditional uses, is dwellings. Additional farm in excess of 1. That is a conditional use in an ag district. And then we have a section back 16, is it 1603? 1503. That essentially says, in any district, more than one structure housing a permitted or permissible principal use may be erected on a single lot. Now they're talking about permitted or permissible, whereas in agriculture, it says you need a CUP for an extra house. So that's an inconsistency that is causing some heartache right now. So we really need to understand the intent as we go through, and if that is not the intent, if we want to rely on 1503, then number 12 needs to be removed. You see where I'm kind of getting with that is when we start just looking at one thing at a time, that's how we get ourselves in this situation, where we have two directives in our ordinances, and there are folks on one side, folks on the other, and their interpretation is different at the end. So let's see, if I keep going through, I have a huge deal about the signs all the way through our ordinance. We have about 100 definitions of signs, and many of them, you'll have two definitions using the same language, and that's probably going to be a year or two down the road to get to the sign one, because that one doesn't seem to be a hot topic right now, but that's in need of some repair. Number 42 under CUPs, spreading, injection, or other application of manure or animal waste generated by an AFO as described herein. So as I read that, we already have a CUP for an animal feeding operation that is outlined directives for handling manure application. So by having number 42, does that mean every one of those needs a second CUP to apply the manure? Or does that apply when you don't need a CUP for your operation?
That's for just spreading manure.
Okay.
You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be from your CAFO. That is to stop people from importing manure and spreading it without having a conditional use.
Well, there's an or, so that's listed
why.
separately toward the end, outside Yankton County. So you can see there could be an argument made that just because you have a CUP for an AFO, you also need a CUP for this specifically. So that to me is a little bit of an inconsistency there.
Dennis and John, like, you guys were on here when this was.
When it was changed?
Well, when you guys were here at the beginning, what was the intent of that?
Originally, it ended after the word herein, the or other livestock production means outside Yankton County was not there. I think there's probably differences between what I think it means and what Dennis thought it meant. What I thought it meant, and from the beginning, you know, and you also have to realize that from the beginning at this point, it was only 999 animal units and up. So those changes of that and down came later. I assumed and I thought from what we had done that the spreading, injection, and manure needed a conditional use. There would be people who were spreading and injecting the manure from their own CAFOs, and they needed a conditional use because that land that it's being spread on may not even be theirs. It may be land 10 miles away that someone else owns. There will be people spreading and injecting manure that don't own a CAFO,
Right.
that are just custom applicators. And they would need this conditional use in order to do that. I thought the intent of this was to kind of have a master map or list and have all the places where manure was spread or injected and have all the conditional uses so that you knew where all the manure from all the CAFOs, both in and out of Yankton County, were going in Yankton County. That was the way I thought it was, and early on when we would see an application from a CAFO that was big enough to have to do this, you would kind of have that. In other words, they would have manure management with the state and you would have that land listed.
They have to be identified.
Yeah, so it was all identified and we just, you know, myself, speaking for myself, I kind of thought this was the way it was being followed. It turned out it was not being the way it was followed. And this was added, this other livestock production means outside of Yankton County was added when we had a livestock production facility on the border of Yankton County that was outside of Yankton County but spreading manure inside of Yankton County. So that's really why the end of that was added. But we never have, that I know of, made people with a CAFO so far follow number 42. And some people like, oh, and the fellow that was out by the colony was in here and got his conditional use, you know, I talked about it then, and to be honest with you, for that guy, it would have been simple. He was spreading on all his own land right around his own place. He already had it all. He had probably already notified everybody from the land itself, and all he would have had to do was have that 42 conditional use listed in his application, and he would have been covered. But, you know, if you go back a few years and you go back to, say, one from the colony was spreading manure clear over on the Walshtown, you know, and the people with the adjoining land had no notification or no idea that this is going on the land right around their home or their business, because 42 was not followed as a conditional use. And that was simply the way the administration at the time was handling it, you know. I didn't agree with that way of handling it, but that's the way it was handled at the time.
So maybe clearing up the language around that, or I have a lawsuit written off to the side, so I know at one time there was a lawsuit
It
in the
did.
county
It ended up going to a lawsuit.
over that,
on
and
this.
there was a writ of mandibus, I think, that came out of that. So food for thought as you're going through there. When we go down to section 513, minimum lot requirements, number 3 gives the zoning administrator may allow a smaller minimum lot requirement where a permit for a single-family home is requested on an existing farmstead site as described herein. And then number 5, an additional dwelling unit is allowed within the farmstead upon approval of the building permit application if it is to be occupied by other members of the farm unit, provided the property is not transacted or prepared. So, you know, you can argue some things around those two, and I think we really need to understand what our intent with all of that is. And again, I alluded to that 1503 there and some of the discrepancies there. Now, number 6 talks about nonprofit religious associations. And down below is in 515 is where I question. I don't think number 5 should be in 515, because essentially you're saying zoning administrator may allow construction of these not in conformance of this provision. And I don't get a reason why number 5 is listed under 515 at all. I don't know why we would automatically say it doesn't apply there. So give that food for thought. Of course, 519, we have a lot of controversy around 519 with Class F being listed there as NA. So when we go through there, if we are truly going to say we have animal feeding operations that are not subject to 519, please don't list them at all there. Just take them out. Right now, if Class F had not been listed there as NA, if it would have just been A, B, C, D, and E, we wouldn't have had so many lawsuits here because it wouldn't have been listed.
Well, it's listed there, but the NA does not apply to it being a conditional use. It applies to what requirements are held.
That's the problem, though, is that is the argument that one side would say, well, it's exempted from everything. And
Except that there's also other places where it says that all AFOs are conditional uses. So
All animal
there's more
feeding
than one
operations.
place that
so,
says that.
yep, so I'm just pointing out where the wording challenges
Yeah, I just think
are
you're
against
backwards on
us.
what you're saying on that. You're saying that because it has NA, it doesn't apply that it's conditional use, but that's not the case.
Very
It says
true,
NA
John,
because it
I'm
doesn't
agreeing with
apply-
you on that,
Yeah, it
totally
doesn't sound
agree
like
with you on that, but that was not what
Yeah.
those lawsuits were about.
Yeah.
So we need to fix that language so we don't find ourselves continuing to be there. And of course, a big section under 519 is to review all of the setbacks that are associated with these. Our citizens have time and time again asked us to review biofilters, pit additives, test wells. So I do believe when we have public hearings around changing these, we need to take sincere input on, do we include those? How, and if we choose to, how we include them, the wording around the may, the shall, Those type things are very important when we start putting that stuff in here. I'm not going to go into any recommendations on setbacks. I think a lot of that should fall out of public comment as you hold your hearings on these. So those are just a few comments around Article 5, which I do agree needs to be the first one that we tackle, for lack of a better word.
I think, looking at this Article 5 is a monster. I think if we just tackle Section 519 first, I think that a little bit more bite size. I don't know what everybody else thinks. Because you get into a lot of stuff with that isn't even really, if we look at what's causing the problems, it's under 519, the most problems. And there's other things that need to be cleaned up, but it's the Class F, it's the setbacks, it's do I need a permit, do I not need a permit? I don't know, what does everybody else feel? I mean,
Well, we've actually,
We've
had
spent some
several
time on
meetings
that
and we've
already.
actually
Yeah.
done this already.
Right.
We did the agricultural the accessory structures, and that, we even had our public meeting on that, and that's sitting in you guys' lap. We have gone through the Class F stuff and some other housekeeping stuff in nonconformance and other stuff, and I think we have a little bit we have to do in nonconformance to clean up what's been going on for the last couple months and get that squared away so that the language says what we do. A lot of what happened or was brought forth in nonconformance, and most of it brought forth by me, is simply trying to make the document read so that it says what we're doing. The problem that we have now is what we're doing isn't always what the document says. And we've been doing stuff the same way sometimes for the whole 16 years, but the document hasn't been changed to say that. And to me, the most important changes we need to make is changes that put the document in alignment with the way we're doing things. I understand, wanting to go into 519 and do a whole bunch of stuff in 519, but it's a relatively newer problem and not that large of a problem compared to the fact that we have legal language problems that we haven't cleared up, especially in Section 16 in nonconformance, that need to be cleaned up. We need to move these things through. We can't sit and wait and pile these things all up and not move them through.
I'd agree.
And that's what I kind of, when we were all at the commission level, we were, prioritizing changes and things like that. And that was one of my top priorities. What I see is probably one change going through that has a bunch of little changes that cleans up language, cleans up, legalities. Let's get those, let's get everyone in a safe place. And then after that, let's tackle big chunks is kind of what I envision. An entire, Article 5, let's just.
Right. That will be a
sit
big
down and do
change,
the whole thing.
Right. And to
But,
put,
I mean, the accessory structures, that's been an ongoing problem, and we spent quite a bit of time, updating that and
Right.
bringing together changes that would encompass most of the variances that came through.
And I take, I guess as chairman of the county commission, I take full responsibility for that. Well, we reached the commission, but we haven't pushed forward. That's on me, and I take responsibility for that. And I guess I will say that in the future, these changes, we as commissioners, when they do come to us, need to do a better job of moving them along, because right now, I feel you guys' frustration. We do all this work, and it just sits there and nothing happens. And we have Mr. Vetter here to assist us now.
Yeah, that will help a
we're
tremendous
gonna,
amount.
We're gonna keep them busy, so you don't have to worry about anything you do. You got anything to add, Gary, or?
No, I don't
just
think so.
pitch in if you want.
The only other thing is the one other item that's listed under the discussion is the combined square footage of the accessory buildings. I've heard that discussion a fair amount since I've been here, but it's not written that way in the
Correct.
ordinance. And I didn't see it in the recommendations that were made for the doubling the sizes and things. So just, it'd be good to have that discussion tonight, just to see where everybody's at, if that's something that you all feel we should be adding.
Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about?
Oh, just when you do go through the definitions, the table, animal unit conversion table doesn't even have Class F listed on that table, so that needs to be, but that was one of the things I wanted to mention tonight was the language around that. It really needs to be totaled. I've been told that we totaled it in the past, but it was never really written that way, and I'm a stickler for details on that, so thanks
Just
for
makes it
bringing
a
that
lot
up.
easier when we're processing requests, that we know exactly what we need to be looking for.
Yep, and at some point, we need to add houses to the ordinance, because I could have a huge house that has a really large garage, much larger probably than I should have on a lot, things like that, the tiny homes, et cetera, so I'll sit down and listen.
Thanks, Sherry. Did you want to go over that article, or that accessory structure?
Well, I think we've pretty
Okay.
much said what, I'd just like to hear a little discussion, and if there's basically on whether or not we want to use the combined square footage or stick with the one building on all the various
Would that
zones.
change?
Personally, I think it makes sense to combine the square footage, and then the only other thing in my mind, that would be potential is to give them one freebie of a 1,200, a 10 by 12 shed.
A garden
A
shed.
garden shed is a freebie.
Yeah,
and
a
then
garden
the
shed's a
rest would
freebie
total.
because
Yeah.
it's a
Or
freebie
I
in
don't know.
town.
Well, and
That's
that
my
is in
thoughts.
there, and that's the way it worked in the city. I kind of put that in there when we did the original zoning, because in the city, you were allowed the one small garden barn, and the reason it was not having a building permit applied to it is because the setbacks didn't apply to it. Because if you're gonna take a little tiny garden barn, and you're gonna move it 20 feet away from the back and 10 feet away from the side,
Middle of your yard.
it's out in the middle of the yard.
And then you
know?
can't
So
build
when you have them
anything
in the
because
city,
it's in the
I mean,
way.
you can't put them, you gotta put it on your own lot, you can't put it so you gotta walk on the other side of the neighbors, but you shouldn't have to put them like you're putting a structure where you're putting a foundation and stuff. They're really kind of a semi-temporary, although long-term temporary building. But they're not really intended to be where
Freebie or not?
the setbacks would push them to.
Actually, in the city, you could fill your lot with.
They don't say one in the city, no, they don't.
You can
Oh, we have-
They
do
just
we
say
have
under
one?
a certain size is not, no building permit.
Do we have that at ours though, like where they can have one of those?
It just
small
says you
ones?
don't need a building permit
Okay,
for
yeah.
one. But I don't know. I mean, what other people's thoughts are. To me, a cumulative square footage.
And I think that's the way it's been
Makes
treated for the
sense.
most part for a long time. The other thing is the language that we have says A1, 2,000. So it doesn't even say one, not in excess of 2,000. It says you have to build a 2,000. So it should, we should clean the language up so that it says, that it's the 2,000 square foot is cumulative. If we wanted to put a total on how many buildings you could have, I mean, you could always do that, but I just don't think it's gonna be enough of a problem. You might have somebody that's gonna have a dozen little sheds, I don't know, but it is what it is.
For number 5, currently, it does say a 120 square foot accessory building without a subgrade foundation. That's an
Yeah.
exception for a building permit.
Mhm.
If we're cleaning up the language for, and calling it a cumulative square footage though, if we don't count the 1,200
The
Well,
120?
or 120 square foot garden shed, I think we specifically put in there, you are allowed one toward, I don't know.
I think we just
And that's
leave it
something we
off
can
to
get-
make it less confusing, and I think we should just
Well,
keep
I
it
think
simple.
maybe one garden shed in high density. But I mean, if you've got a 5-acre lot and you're in low density, I mean.
Well, you can
or
have
rural.
as many as you want, but it adds
Only one is,
Oh.
adds to your total.
Okay, I
only
see
one
what you're
doesn't
saying.
count towards the building.
I see,
total.
one is exempt
Would
from
be
the
the-
total, okay.
And we don't have to get all those details tonight. I think the main thing was to kind of go through overall process and where
Well,
we
can
want
We
to
you-
go.
should get the cumulative because that's ready to go. It's been read through here.
Yeah.
We can schedule that 10 days and start the process and get that
Yeah, you
through,
guys
which is
can
I
do
wanna
that at
do.
the
So
county
I mean,
commission.
let's get that figured out tonight, I think. I mean, if we're, are we going cumulative or what? I mean, let's get that ironed out and then we're done with it. And I think we just don't even mess with these small shit, you know, like you said, is that even gonna become it hasn't been a problem yet. Is it
Yeah,
gonna
it's
become a
separately
problem?
listed.
Probably not.
That it's exempted from a building permit, so I
Yeah.
think that would be okay. Exempted
that
from a
would
building
be-
permit would pretty much, you know, guarantee that it's not gonna count towards the accessory structures.
Right.
But do you keep it down to one building?
It does say one. It does say one. I'm
Because
pretty
like in
sure.
the instance of, I'm not in the R1 district, but the like gentleman across the road from me, that one of the guys that lived there last year just collected outhouses.
Yeah.
So he's got 6 or 8 of them sitting around, you know, the property, so it's not a cumulative.
Does he sell them?
No,
Oh.
I don't know
That's
why,
art.
what he did with them.
That's
Just-
yard art.
I don't think you want to know what
Not
it
really
is.
Yard art.
Maybe used.
Well, I thought, well, you know, maybe it's a
Stored
business
for
or
kids For
something.
school bus stop.
Some people
Did you
do
get
that
your, did you
quirky
get your
stuff.
answer for
Create
that?
the drift
then?
now in a bowl.
Oh, I imagine that's all that. it's all-
If you wanna read, do you wanna read it, like what you understand it to be,
Well, I
and make
think
sure we're on
basically
that?
what we're saying, yeah,
It
is
skunks.
that,
So we're all on the same page.
we'll change all the amounts of the square footages on the accessory buildings, except that, yeah, any building that doesn't require a building permit that's that's 120 square feet or less wouldn't be counted towards that amount, so,
You could just say they're exempt.
yep.
So will that be published again for a hearing here, and then a hearing at the county commission?
We've already, I don't know, what do you think, Gary? We've already had the hearing here. Do we wanna redo that again, or could we make that change at
I
the
think
county?
if you're okay with that, you could just move forward on to advertising it in the county.
In the county commission.
Cause that'll have to be 2 hearings, that'll have 1 hearing and then,
Second,
okay, all right.
All right, any more discussion on that from the county commission before we move on to the items on the agenda? Or I guess we got 5 minutes yet of time for discussion before the first person's up. 10 minutes. Okay, more carefully.
Something I would like to just see, I guess, especially, and I know Gary, I've asked him to kind of make a running list of things he sees pop up that are unclear or recurring and kind of things we've all been discussing anyway. But I would like, you know, I know we put everything into the accessory structures and I'm okay moving forward with that. But I'd like to see a bunch of these little changes in one change. I don't want to see a little change on that. You know, clarify this word and then we got first reading, second reading, publication, and then we're doing that again.
Well, Joe, I mean, obviously, that's what happens. We sit up here and we discuss and we think we see it clearly and what we're doing and whatever, and we make recommendations, we put it all together, and we give it to you guys, and then you see something else down there. And then what? Then you bring it back to us, and then we have to do it all over again. I mean, it would certainly be helpful if you guys would give us some guidance and guidelines, and not only, you know, from our zoning administrator, but from Sherry and whatever. She had some bullet points. There's no reason why we can't. We're not talking like we're gonna do everything you ask us to do. But you can certainly say, as you're looking at this ordinance, look for these things and give us
Right.
I think
some
that was good.
guidance.
I think
So
that
that
was
we, can look at it and talk about it in the moment, instead of it going down there and coming back and going down there and coming back, and then we go, oh, I see what she means.
Right.
I wish I'd have known that when we started this discussion.
That's a good point.
And that was
That's a
hopefully
good-
I mean,
what's part
yeah.
of this, hopefully we spur something, and with, you know, add one more feather to Gary's hat. But that's one thing that I'll admit I've been dragging my feet a little bit on some of these changes, but I think, having Gary in his position, you can have some of these conversations with others, and you can be at a meeting where we're discussing changes, and then he can bounce that off of Sherry and Donna
Right.
and Gary, and
Because,
and if someone has a real issue with a particular thing at the
Yeah.
next meeting when we're discussing it, he can bring that up.
sure,
We can-
I mean, things get missed. It would be, if this cumulative amount, if that would have somehow came to us and said, hey, guys, look at this, in the moment, it certainly would have cleaned up the whole process.
Yep.
And that's gonna be the same going forward with all of these issues.
Yep, would agree.
Yeah, I think the goal is to, once it, my hopes is that Sherry and Don and Gary, their first knowledge of a change coming through or of what it actually is, isn't when it gets to
Right.
the commission. It
Right.
should be
Yeah.
ongoing
Yeah,
as it's happening.
And with that, when we do our change, or we're getting ready to that, now that we have you, we'll send that to the commission. Just like you said, Donna, they should be aware, they won't be at the meeting, but they should be aware of what we're
Right.
dealing. And then it's on them to give us their input, and he can facilitate that. I
mean,
really like what you're saying.
I'm not saying
Makes
that
sense.
you guys are gonna tell us how to
No.
vote or how to do
No,
this.
no.
Give us your suggestions, we'll look at it, maybe we won't, we'll have reasons why we don't think
Yeah.
that should be that
Yeah.
way. And then you guys will have to change it your way, but it certainly
Right.
seems kind of
I agree.
like we're wasting time.
Right, and that's what helps with having this history here too, of people that have been involved since the beginning of how certain things were established.
Would agree.
Yeah, because we actually had a person that wanted to spread human waste.
Well, and
Remember
I think
that?
those of us who have been here from the way back understand that a lot of the things that went in here and the reasonings that they went in here are compromise. They may not have been good things that be in there, and weren't all agreeing to it, but it was all trying to compromise and get this thing, on paper. But now, yes, it needs to be cleaned up.
Did you get the emails I forwarded to you?
I did.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you have anything you wanted to say to the planning commission or anything, Rob, while you're here? or- Okay.
And then I'm happy to look over stuff. I just telling Sherry, I said, why don't you have Mandy of some sort, which she kind of reviewed the fact there's two commissioners here.
Yeah, I think that, do you agree with that, Sherry, when we're working on this stuff, we'll use Gary Vetter as our in-between, and when he's sending stuff out, he'll keep the commission involved. And just like, Donna made that point, the time you guys hear about a change shouldn't be when it comes to the commission, it should be well before that, and then the info flow will go through that, Gary, and then back to this board, so we're all on the same page. I think that was an excellent suggestion, Donna.
Yeah.
All right.
Do you have the information that Mr. Harper came up with on section 16 still from the meeting? 'Cause I did not
The
include that.
non-conformance?
Yeah. the
I gave
non-conformance.
it, he has it already.
Okay.
I say I have it in
All right,
file
because I just
somewhere.
realized that I did not include that when I sent you the minutes from that meeting. So I
that's
just wanted to
probably-
make a note of that.
That's
Still-
probably what we should
Because he had
do.
had his part all done, and so I finished the rest of that meeting, and it just occurred to me that I didn't give that to you.
Is that what you were recommending before we start on any of these big ones? Do the non-conformance stuff that we talked about, have a,
Well, and what you guys are talking about is exactly what I wanted to do, which was go and fix all of section 16.
okay.
You know, and I think we need to do a little bit yet because 1611, I think, is where we got into trouble the last few weeks trying to make pre-existing properties get conditional uses and variances on things that happened 50 years ago. You know, conditional uses and variances are not for things that have already happened, they're for things where you're asking for permission to do something.
Yeah, because
So
all
in
those
that-
things are grandfathered.
This is something that was really sorted out early on in the zoning process, you know, probably in 2001, 2002, in the way things were done, but was not changed specifically in the book to address things in the book that could be construed that way. It's a lot like the accessory structure and the cumulative. It's the way it's been done, it's just not what the book says.
Yeah. That's
It's the precedent that's been used all the way through, and we just need to make the book align with the way that we do things.
There's a lot of that on the drainage commission too, that how, you know, I think the original intent when that came out was we gotta start somewhere. And you start, and you have the intention of a few years down the road making these changes and revisions, and it usually falls by the wayside. 'cause
They're hard to do because people gotta compromise, like you said, Donna, is, you know, it might not be 100% what I want, but you gotta kind of compromise a little bit on that.
The biggest problem is once you get the precedent working one way, there's no longer a problem with what's happening day to day. So you're not excited or worried about going back and changing the ordinance because things are working fine.
Yep.
It only becomes a problem when 15 years down the line, somebody
that's
comes
just
in
it.
and reads it a different way, and then
Yeah.
here we are back where we started again, back at the beginning.
Okay, any other comments before we move forward from the commission?
Charity, I mean.
All righty. Okay, next item on the agenda. Tim Binder, 3,300 West 8th Street. Conditional use permit, develop multifamily dwellings in a second story of a commercial building, as well as in the northern portion of a secondary building in Lakeside Commercial District. Legal description is the south 200 feet, the west 330 feet of parcel A in the northeast quarter of the northwest quarter, except lot H2 in section 15, T93 north, range 56 west. Do we have Mr. Binder here?
Madam Chairman, could I have the minutes of the meeting read that Commissioner Loos left before this hearing took place, and
Oh.
there was, no, you know, not, a quorum was not present when this issue
Okay.
was addressed. Could we
Okay.
have that reflected in the minutes?
Thought we finished this.
Okay. Did you get that? Yeah, Commissioner Loos left before the Bender CUP was heard, and there was no quorum present at the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yep.
Thought we already did this.
I have additional information that I did not have time to get sent to you, and apologies if you'll accept that at this time, I'd appreciate it.
It's fine. Yes.
Thank you.
And I can go through what each one is. If it helps. This
Thank you.
starts with the letter you just read. Some of this you may have already. Where do we go? Good one. Got 15.
They should probably get one too if they don't have one.
Yeah, I think, just go on. Okay, to use this section here, the pictures over there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the first packet I just gave you, the first letter is obviously the one that we just read that was sent out to everyone. The second one is a picture of the property. And the third page is kind of new, I think, to everybody. Larry's been working on it. This is a packet that he proposes, or I don't even know where it generated from, that goes to the individual that comes in to apply for conditional use or whatever, permit or whatever. So this is the first page of that, pre-plan. Fourth page is a little bit of codes and stuff like that. Fourth page, if you see June of this year, I actually talked to Larry about doing this to the building. And so it's been in the works for a while. I just didn't haphazardly wake up and think I'm going to do this. So I've been in communication with him from the beginning, actually before I bought the building, to know what I was getting into from the fire marshal standpoint. So it just shows that I've been in communication with him for a while. Second page will be also part of that packet that I think zoning planning would provide for new applicants. Basically just an application of what I propose to do. The next page is the outbuilding, just a quick sketch layout. I didn't spend a lot of time on this because it's an old structure. I have no idea where utilities are or anything, so things are going to be subject to change. Can't just put a window where I want to. I may have to consider plumbing, electrical, or whatever. So this is a proposal to add basically a studio apartment to the northern part of that. Shows to be approximately 22 by 30 in size, which should give great size for anybody that would want to use the facility for a business and a place to stay to save money or whatever. The next page is the first floor layout of the large building which we're talking about. It's currently rented on the east side, or on the right side of your picture there, to a rehab center. And it's finished out as it is drawn there to date. Basically, the bottom part is all finished out as it's drawn here. There hasn't been any additions. The rest of it is baked in at this time. The next page is the proposed layout for the apartments on the second floor. Now, the east part of that has been finished since the building's inception in 2000-ish, 2001. I'm not sure of the final date. But those walls and petitions and bathrooms that are in there are currently in there as they are. They're plumbed, walls are in, the electrical didn't get finished. So therefore, obviously I'd want to continue that with the apartment if at all possible, otherwise it would all have to be gutted, and that would be, it does have 3 finished bathrooms in it. Or I should say plumbed, they're not finished. And then off to the west is where I would propose a couple of, now the limitation is obviously the egress windows. So I have to keep the perimeter as far as bedrooms, and that kind of limits the apartments and the size and what I can do there. It's kind of a basic layout of what I think. The first one there is a 2-bedroom. The one in the middle would be like a studio, or it may be connected to the other ones and make them a 3-bedroom, and then the next one over is also a 2-bedroom, and then the second portion is the upstairs of the build-out portion, which would also serve as a decent residence. So all this was provided to Larry, or the fire marshal, and he sent a letter of approval, pretty much, with certain conditions as far as drywall, 5/8 drywall. And
Right,
have to
fire rated
separate,
cheap.
you know, 20-minute doors and things like that. It's basic stuff. And then the last page is something he found when he filed this away from way back when. He doesn't even remember how it got there. But it's just a proposal of the original structure, and it does not show the portion on the east side here. It's just a proposal. It says apartments, and I don't know, can't read it. It's rough.
It's busy.
It's real busy. This is what I've been busy doing, trying to provide, I think, what this commission needs to approve this. think their hang-up was the size of the apartments, which I was blindsided. I had no idea I would have to provide information like that at this point in the day. So hopefully this sheds a little light on what you're looking for, and what they're looking for. Any questions, I'd be happy to address.
I think we discussed septic once upon a time.
Yes, I guess I didn't get that in here, but that was covered initially. I think Plummer said that I couldn't build enough to exceed the amount of green space I had.
Could you get something in that and to add this to
To
the
add to
packet
it,
before it
yes.
goes to the Board of Adjustment?
I asked the plumber, and he said, well, the commission doesn't need to know that, because I asked him for that. I had him out there to approve it, and they said, well, they're gonna wanna know, the picture was up here.
I'd like to see that, I guess.
They wanted
Help it
15
out.
feet off the
Yeah.
red line, basically, the property line off all the way around, which leaves so many feet. And
Yeah.
I think I had that in the original
Yeah, I don't
sketch
have,
that
I don't have the
I do
original.
not have.
That would be something that would be helpful, you know, because those questions could be asked.
Well,
in
I
the
thought it was, and
compartment,
the plumber sat on one of these chairs by the way for a while, and he said, well, they know all the legits for that, so he didn't really readily want to provide that.
Sure.
I'm not, but it's okay. I'm new to this.
Yeah.
I lived in the lake area for 35 years. I've had a business for 30 years, and this is the third or second time I've been here, so
Sure.
I have no idea what you're looking for. So, kind of trying to fill that gap.
The other building you have to the west, are you still doing something with that one, that little building?
Yeah, that would have been the second or whatever, third page
Third
drawing, I
page.
think I had there.
All right, oh yeah, the office, okay. Got it.
Well,
Is it
yeah,
this
no,
one,
it's-
right?
It's Jim's leather repair right now, but that would be the outbuilding.
This one,
Yes.
okay. And is somebody gonna be living in that one as well then?
Well, I'd like the option, I guess, because
Okay.
when Discount Grocery was in there, they were having difficulties and wanted to sublease it. A lot of the questions were, can we live here or a dual purpose? And Fire Marshal's concern on this, it says it's basically no different than a house. 5/8 drywall, 20-minute fire door,
Okay.
and it can all comply to the
And the egress windows in the.
to the state codes. I
yeah.
understand that if you don't have county codes, it kind of supposedly defaults to the state or city. I don't, this is not my realm of expertise, so I'm just trying to utilize and make a little money back on the property. I think I've cleaned it up pretty well. For years, it was pretty rough shape.
I don't have any questions for that.
No
Ken,
questions?
any more?
Anybody else have any questions for him before I ask for public comment? Thank you for providing us with additional information. We appreciate that.
Like I said, with the septic, I will try to find one more that will say, this is the, I mean, we laid it out and it's 15 feet off the red line and off the backside, and then, of course, that's all parking lot next to it there, which I think it left 20 by 100 feet so, for drain fields. It would include 2 more 2,000-gallon tanks set in series so that it could control the, which is kind of an iffy thing he said, but I just as soon spend the extra money and not have a problem.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Is there anyone from the audience that would like to speak on this permit application? Okay, hearing none. Time for public input on this CUP request is now closed to the public. Any other discussion on this application? I think it would be an attractive location for people that might want to live nearer the lake. Oh, I do have one question. You are proposing a long-term lease, not like a hotel type situation, right?
Right, I would like to, and I'm toying with the idea of possibly furnishing apartments
Okay,
so that it could be more attractive to people that might be moving here, looking for a house. Somebody that sells their house, needs a place to stay till that next one's built or they find something. I'm kind of leaning that way as far as actually providing fully furnished facilities, you know,
sure.
and so, yeah, long-term is always my goal because I don't want to have to deal with the on a
Clients
day-to-day
all
basis
over, yeah.
or month to month.
Yeah.
But
Right.
I think it would be attractive to have something that's furnished for like, you know, I do a lot of work for corporations like Egro and Parker and Truxedo, and if they were to have people come in and new managers or whatever, they have a place ready to go. They don't have to
Right,
worry
till
about
they find a
utilities
house,
and
yeah.
everything else.
Zoning
That's kind of where I
administrators.
really want to lean to.
I said zoning administrators.
He's got a place.
We'd have to think about it.
First month and last month's rent.
Heavy deposit.
I think it looks like good projects, and
Yeah.
I don't think
do too.
anything's changed much since we saw it last, other than some more detail on.
Right.
I think it came through here, was it unanimous last time through the planning board? I can't remember. Do you remember, Jessica? I don't quote me on that, but.
All right, so,
I'd move approval of the conditional use permit,
all right.
following section 1107.
We have a second?
Second?
All right. We'll call vote whenever you're ready.
Parker,
Yes.
Clevich,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
Frank.
Yes.
All right. Motion carried. Okay, next item on the agenda is Jared Shrimp. 186 Marsh Ridge Road, and this is a request for an extension.
Evening, everyone. I'll start from the top here. So I bought a little piece of property out on Kaiser Road in 2015 with all intentions of building a house, living out there permanently. I thought it'd be a good idea in 2017 to build a shed for storage of all my things as I get prepared to move out there. Apparently the problem with that is having a secondary structure before a primary is a big no-no. So I came a couple of these meetings, got everything approved. I also got a 5-year grace period to build a house. And due to the increased cost of the shed for building it how I was told to, I had to have living quarters in it, which is heat, insulation, propane, bathroom, water line, septic tank, drain field. Really added, as everything does. So it put me back quite a bit more financially than I originally planned. So I'm here just to ask for a little bit more time to build a house. I was hoping to get an additional 5 years on top of the 5 years that I asked for originally, just to cover the cost of the additional cost of the shed. to build it like I was told to. So, I don't know if that's a big deal now. It certainly wasn't 2 years ago when I originally went through all this, but I understand times have changed. So,
So you got a 5-year extension, so you got 3 years yet to
I
build
got
the
3
house?
years, yeah.
So I guess I don't, why are you coming to us if you get 3 years? You might win the lotto or anything, this might not be, this might not even be an issue 3 years from now. I hate, you know, I
Yeah,
guess.
I hope you're right. I really do, but I just need a little insurance policy. I don't want to be house broke and living on the street when in 3 years when I get kicked out of my house. And it happens, but
Do you want to weigh in at all? I don't know if you've looked close enough. The
No,
question I
haven't
have
really.
is, do we even do we even have a means of doing this?
I guess I was surprised that it was originally even agreed upon for the 5 years. But since I wasn't here at the time, I don't know what all occurred at that time, but my experience has been that, generally, in most areas, if something like that is allowed, they probably have a maximum of 2 years to get the primary structure built.
I know that we've given, when I was on this board before, we've given people 1 year. And they were allowed to live in a camper temporarily, whatever, but we have shut them down after that, pretty forcefully, really.
It's generally a
There's several people
convenience,
who were,
yeah, a convenience factor that they were building the house, but
Right.
they have in the garage first, they had
Right.
tools and material
I mean,
and stuff,
right.
storage in the outbuilding. That's generally the way, if they were done, they weren't done very often, but.
the whole purpose was that we don't end up with a bunch of storage sheds out there and no house. And obviously, that's what we ended up with,
That was the
because we
issue.
gave you this,
right, that was the issue.
which we should have never done, in my opinion.
Right.
Because this is what happens. And, now what do you do? It's the,
Well, I'm certainly not using this shed to make money on. I can
well,
promise you
it isn't about money, it's about your neighbors and the neighborhood and what your intentions were, which was to build a house.
that. Right.
Not to have a storage shed out in a residential area.
Well, my question is, if we felt that we wanted to give them an extension, and if we could, or however, I mean, how would
How would
we
you
even
do
go
it?
about it, my question? There's not a form.
Because your permit is still
I don't think-
valid.
I don't think there's a way
Right,
to just.
I'm just
do it.
saying, with the increased cost of the shed for building it like you guys told me to originally 2 years ago, it put me back, basically doubled the cost of this shed already.
So,
Is your
The
shed
question
built
I've
then?
got
Your
is-
shed
Built,
built?
it's up, you guys came and inspected it, in 2018, the spring after I got done with it, and all was kosher.
how is this being assessed? You have living quarters in it,
There
and
is a
that, was that
bathroom-
required
That
by?
was required originally, yes. So I had to put a bathroom, kitchen sink, and then Pat Garrity originally, who was, here then, of course, he's not here anymore, but he said that basically if you put a fryer on a table, that can be considered a kitchen and you got yourself living quarters.
You have it's
But
finished like an
it's-
apartment, is that what you're telling us?
It's finished, you can live in it, absolutely. I mean, it's heated, there's a 500-gallon propane tank out there with a industrial heater, insulated concrete
The problem
floor.
with this is if we call this a house, he can't build another house there.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
Well, how do you have two houses?
As long as you meet the setbacks of yards and spaces, you can have more than one residence on it, more than one dwelling on a lot.
I mean, we don't have guidelines about what your house looks
But
like. He's got a house.
It would have been easier if this had been called a house.
Right.
And then he came in and said, now I want to put a house, can we
Right.
change this to an accessory structure? That would have been easier to do. Because I think you can do
We
that.
can't give extensions like that for
But I don't
anything.
think we have a path to an extension that I know of
Do you
for-
remember the details, Zane or Dan?
for anything.
I'm trying to forget.
Well, 'cause
This was contentious, I believe it was,
Was
But
it
we,
Was it a neighborhood, was there neighborhood resistance to it, or?
No, there wasn't.
I
Nobody
don't
even showed up.
think so,
Think so.
but I know there was talk about not wanting this to just become the house.
Yeah.
Do you remember that, Zane?
Yeah,
I mean, because
we were a little concerned.
yeah. And this is the only one I remember of, you know, my concern is, you know, a 5-year grace period, and we're still 3 years off.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's, like I said, I'm hesitant to give another 5-year extension for a total of, what, 10 years? That's,
My concern is, or the question I guess I have, and I'm not,
Yeah.
you know, throwing stones here, I'm just trying to understand. If we were concerned that it's gonna become a house, we mandated that there were living quarters inside of
Then
it?
it became a house.
And this is under 10 acres, so.
Well, and we had some of these where we've got
We had a couple.
metal buildings and the guys wanted a storage building from out of town and they wanted to keep their campers and boats here and they put a little apartment in the upper loft
that's
of
what it was, exactly, yeah.
They got, you know, considered a dwelling even though it's 90% storage for whatever. And we don't want to really encourage that, you know what I mean? We don't want to encourage that type of situation. But having a house and a shed is just fine.
Right. It's just building the
What was
shed
your
before the
reason,
house.
what was your reason, again, I don't remember your concept for putting the shed before the house, what was that?
I just needed a place to temporarily store my stuff while I built the house, moved, whatever. I just wanted a shed to put things on, you know, and so right now there is a boat, a tractor, an ice castle, which is the camper. So we've got a couple campers, some miscellaneous things, but it's personal stuff. I mean, I'm not gonna charge people to
R1.
rent space.
Sell all that stuff, Jared, you
Yeah,
can build a house.
I'm
What's
I'm
that?
thinking you're coming
I said,
forward
sell all
and
your
talking
toys, you can
about
build a house.
financial problems.
Well-
This isn't exactly.
Depending on how this meeting goes, that might be what I have to do.
That's right.
I just don't know of a way to give an extension on, you know, there really isn't anything in our books to give any kind of an extension on anything that I know of. There just really
If there was
isn't.
some way to take away that, I would take it away personally.
I don't know.
That's
Because
what I
that's not wrong.
That's not what I was told 2 years ago.
Well, I wasn't here 2 years ago.
Dan was here 2 years ago.
Yeah,
You're actually the one that said, build your shed beautiful, come back for more time if you need it. So that's what I'm here for.
yeah, I remember we did, I think there was concern about it just being, just a plain steel shed, right? And so what did we require?
Originally, I wanted to just build basically a pole barn, you know,
Yeah.
no concrete floor, no nothing. And I was instructed that if I wanted to build a secondary structure before a primary structure, I had to put a living quarters in it, which is, like I said,
Doesn't
heat,
even make
bathroom,
sense.
kitchen
I don't even know
sink.
who told.
That doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, without looking at the meeting minutes, that was been so long ago. And I think we did this, we did do something similar to this, Zane, for the guy who was building his own house. And he was storing all that equipment in, that wasn't you, right? That was the
No.
guy who had the backhoe and all that, that was somebody else. But I don't think we gave him 5 years to do that, though. What's the address for this, Steve?
186 Marsh Ridge Road, and I doubt it's on Google Earth yet, or maps.
186, what was it?
Marsh Ridge Road.
Marsh Ridge?
Yep.
Like it was stated, unfortunately, there's nothing in the ordinance that would allow that, for you to do that currently, but.
How many acres is that?
29. If you go to 43427 Kaiser, that'd be my neighbor.
So is this your shed here, then? Is that you? I guess this is the place, right?
So, it's not on there yet.
Okay, where's it at?
That's right. Oops, I'm sorry. So this is my neighbor, my shed would be right in this little low spot.
Okay.
Right there.
Is this your access point then?
That would be the access, yeah.
Okay.
So the back side. Must be the other side.
You know,
Must be the other side of that picture. Let's see where it's that shed right there. Are you looking at a different one? An older one?
What's in my packet?
I have old on this one. I have old written on this one. You should have two things in your packet. I wrote old on one and new on the other one.
Okay, gotcha.
So the old one has a little shed designation on it. What? Well, there's mine.
Alright,
Oh, there it is, okay.
just gonna stick into a different page or something.
Maybe you had your thumb over it. Okay, so do we have any other questions for him before I ask for input from the audience? All right, thank you, Jared. Okay, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this item on the agenda?
This may be a very stupid question, but I don't know.
Okay, you
And
need
it's
to
just-
state your name, I'm sorry,
Oh.
just for the record.
Forgot. Patty
I don't-
Gramco. What if he made that current shed into a house? Well, you're not supposed to say that.
I built it like I was supposed to, like they said 2 years ago. Did it exactly as I was told. So,
I know, you had
it was a battle.
you had the old,
Okay, all right.
is that a
Anything else?
possibility?
Anyone else in the audience that wants to speak on this agenda item? Okay. Hearing none, time for public input is now closed. Okay. He still has 3 years on this permit. So I don't see any reason to grant an extension when it's not even expired yet, or it's not even about to expire. And we don't have a path in the ordinance to do it legally. So I think it's kind of a moot point.
Well, I agree, I just don't know what the path would be, but I do understand the concern. I mean,
Yeah.
it takes 3 years to build a house, or it can,
Yeah.
you know.
I'm
if
just
you're-
saying I'm not gonna be financially ready yet in 3 years.
Well,
I have enough money to build this house in 3 years. How much does shed set me back? Because I built it the way that the county commission told me to.
Yeah, I guess I can't really understand why they would have had you put the apartment in there unless you were trying to make it the dwelling. I don't know what to say. I wasn't here then. It doesn't really make sense to me, and
Well,
the whole idea of getting the conditional use is so you didn't have to do all the stuff to have a dwelling. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. We weren't here. We weren't a part of it.
Tell me I can have another 5 years.
What do you
Granted
recommend, Gary?
authority.
What do you recommend to us?
Well, I understand exactly what he's saying too. Unfortunately, yeah, it puts you in a tough spot that most of you weren't here at the time. None of us know exactly, if that was something that was being done regularly or just once in a while where they gave 5 years and
why, like John said, why the requirement was to build to that detail in a shop that wasn't gonna be the primary home. It's very hard to answer that.
To go back to an extension, that it would be a modification of your CUP.
Right.
Which, does that exist?
I mean,
Does that
Which is
exist, Rob?
Currently in
CUP
court to see if it exists, because there was a modification of a CUP done, and that's in court right now.
So what's a CUP?
Your conditional use permit, so you got a conditional use permit.
thing is, if we change that, you
Makes
can't
sense
change
either.
that conditional use permit, so if we take that off, if he just drops the conditional use permit, comes in and gets a building permit for a house, follows the guidelines that he's told to build a house, and changes that to a house, aside from building without a building permit, and the fine that goes along with that, it would be taken care of. But, you know, we can't change a conditional use.
Well, in talking through this, there's no such thing as a conditional use
No,
for a house or a.
It's not a listed conditional use, is
no,
what you're saying.
no. That's why, I mean, the conditional use is, you can't make it a house because it makes the conditional use null and void, which is fine. Because he doesn't need a conditional use to build a house.
It might be already. Because there's no.
There's no building permit.
Conditional use is accessory ag structure, I suppose, is probably what it might have been under.
But people don't live in an ag structure.
Right, that would be an accessory,
Right.
accessory ag structure.
They could get several houses, building ag buildings that are beautiful homes.
Oh, you know, and I don't have any issue with it, it's just that the building permit then would cover the things like kitchen and bathroom and septic tanks and things that need to be in place to make sure it's a house. You know, which, you know.
Yeah, they made them not experiments.
Are you living in this now? Is the plan?
No, not living now.
Okay.
But the plan was to, I don't know, if this got shut down, I had some backup plans. I was gonna sell my house, buy a camper and move on, but I really don't wanna do that.
Is there-
I was hoping this would go through, but
Is there any
you're
intent
not
to
allowed
like
to do that.
turn it into, I mean, is it living quarters now? You wanna build a house, you just can't do it now?
right, I just can't financially fund it now. Because the structure cost me
Sure.
twice as much as it was originally planned.
Done.
Donna, how do you drop a CUP? How do you do that?
Well,
Is that a possible route?
that's not a question for me. I'm just trying to, I just throw things out, that's what I do. And then these guys clean me up.
Rob, do you have any guidance on something like this or not? It's pretty,
I don't know, Dan, I don't know how you could do it and get back up and start all over. I mean, like Donna said, start from the beginning.
Yeah, I don't
That's
have
an
any.
option.
Should have been,
Today, I don't know what abilities you have.
Well, I mean,
Well,
let's say this, let's say someone is not in compliance with their CUP, what would we do? We would revoke it, right? So we could revoke it because he's not in compliance, but we can't do that until that 5 years is up.
Nothing to do today.
No,
you said you have a tractor in there?
Yeah, I mean, even if you want.
So what if he came forward and got a CUP, because it's a use, it's not for the structure, it's for the use, got a CUP for an accessory ag structure, which does not have to,
I'm not sure how.
I still
it would
think the
help.
issue is though, is he's been granted all the stuff that he needed and someplace along the line in the planning commission and it went on through the whole system, was granted a 5-year extension to build a house.
Right.
And he hasn't reached the end of that yet, so you really can't
No.
take the stuff away because it
He's already
says in
been
here that he's
granted it.
given 5 years.
Yeah.
He's got 5 years to get it done, and he's still
we
got 3 years
wouldn't have to
left.
take it, we could just, we don't have to take any action on this, but he could ask for a conditional use for that building to be an accessory ag structure.
Yeah, that is allowed for.
And that would be allowed, and then 5
In 3
years, in 3 years, if there isn't a house, then he's in violation of this and we pull this CUP. But he still would have a CUP for an ag structure.
The only thing you
Well,
have
he can
there
have the ag
is the
structure.
definition of
It's-
accessory agricultural
it's
structure. A structure customarily incidental and necessary to farming and raising animals, including barns and other shelters, corrals, fences, silos, and storage sheds for machinery and crops.
It's
It's a
allowed,
pretty
but
big
only with
stretch
the
in a
house.
residential area.
It's a CUP, it's a.
Yeah, but you think he can have that without having a primary structure
Yeah.
in that zone?
It's zoned R1.
It still would have to be one of
I
the
think
permitted
so,
principal uses.
because it still would what?
It still would have to have one of the permitted principal uses before it could have an
Right.
Before it can have a.
accessory agricultural structure.
I mean, you
It has
still
to have one of the
a-
six,
Yes, yeah.
I mean, that doesn't change
one of the 6 principal
that
uses.
you need a house.
Would you consider a camper a house?
No, you can't park a camper on a lot for a extended period of time.
Mobile home, would you consider a utility facility?
Well, I would think, the way I would think this would play out is the 3 years would go, and when it got close to the 3 years, he would try and come in and get I don't know what he would do.
That's just it, that's.
If he could get any, unless he decides that it's a dwelling. I don't, it's gotta be one of those 6 principal permitted uses
Well,
before
I
it
mean,
can be anything else.
if push came to shove, I'd like anybody to tell me what he has a conditional use for today.
There's a conditional use if there's not a conditional use listed for. This was what I argued about a couple weeks ago. We were trying to grant a conditional use with a conditional use that wasn't in the list of conditional uses.
Yep, you're right. Was it determined the accessory structure though? Wouldn't that be why he would need a conditional use, so because of the accessory structure?
That
He
was
would
what
need a
it,
conditional use for that, but he's gotta have the permitted use before he can have a conditional use.
But the way I read through this here, the way they kind of explained it was they were giving him conditional use on that
variance
with the
to build the
intent that
accessory structure
he was
before
gonna
the
build a
principal
house and
structure.
structures.
They were. I don't know, and I don't know the semantics of it, whether it should have been a variance, whether it should have been a conditional use, whether you should have been
Well,
variancing.
he needed a variance to build
We
it
had
bigger
variances on there.
than 2,000.
But whether he should have gotten a
Square
variance
feet.
to vary needing the principal permitted use before the other before, or how it should have
Yeah.
been handled, I'm not quite sure.
I think lesson learned how it should have been handled is no.
Yeah, the
Build
way
a
that,
house.
No, you build a house first.
Rebuild the house first.
the way that it was
Future
handled is
reference,
not,
But
there's no path in the ordinance to handle it the way it was handled.
No.
And there's no path in the ordinance to handle it now.
To fix the way it was handled.
Can I ask another question?
public comment.
No, the public comment is
Because
closed.
we're trying to work it
Yeah.
out, really. We're
Yeah.
not being hard on him, just relax.
But if he is gonna try and take the out of declaring it a dwelling, he doesn't have to do that for 3 years.
No. No, I mean, he's fine for 3 years. I mean, even though, I don't think it was done right, it was done.
Yeah, you're always just kinda stuck with whatever was done, whether
Yeah.
it was done correctly or not.
I mean, I think it put him in a hard spot. I mean, seriously, he would have been better off if he just said, no, never mind, and waited to build his house. But because the way they forced him to jump through these hoops, but I think we need to wait 3 years, and it gives our new zoning administrator to do, number one, to go out and take a look at it, number two, to maybe he can come up with some ideas and talk to them about it and try to, 3 years to work something out and find a solution to this. I don't think it's something we can certainly do right now. And it doesn't change anything in his life for 3 years,
you should have 3 years to think about it.
Or for a rich uncle to die and leave you an inheritance.
You know,
Well,
at least,
nothing jumps out as far as how to handle it today, but
There's only a list of 6 things there that you gotta have one of, so.
If he came in and asked, applied for a different permit to change that structure to a house and paid the actual permit fees for the size square footage that he has on it, and to build a residence inside that.
Well, I think he has the residence inside it already, from what I understand he's saying. So, you know, I don't know if he couldn't just come in and technically change that to a dwelling. I don't know that there's any permit or anything, because there's no additional construction needed to do it. You know, then he would just have the problem of when he goes to build his house, can he just change that
well.
back to an accessory structure?
We certainly
or-
have to have some paperwork for building permits or something, especially for the assessor's office, who, I mean, someone has to go in there and take a look at what's going on there.
what do they
I'm
have
assuming
this
they do
assessed
now.
at?
Yeah, I got it right here.
Do?
Not logged in, but
You don't get by with much, they find you pretty quick.
They find out.
What's,
it doesn't even have anything on there.
well, the picture doesn't, but they should have. When'd you build the 17?
2017.
Yeah, 'cause they got it. What's AGA? What code is that?
Well, it says on his application, it's R1.
What is the,
The
does the A
zoning-
mean something though? AGA?
EGA is the type of
AGA
of
one.
land, so for assessment purposes, that's tagged,
Mhm.
but for our
Zoning,
purposes, it's
it's-
zoned.
It's R1, low density.
Right.
So for the soil, he's doing, I would assume, assessed by soil.
There goes the pasture.
Because they've got AGA1, which to me looks like
That's ag building.
the building, and then an AGA, which would be the land.
Correct.
So it's just,
They're assessing it as an
right
ag
now,
building.
it's assessed as an ag structure.
They don't, yeah, they don't use zoning.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
There isn't a direct correlation between the two.
Okay.
Well, he's before us, so we need to take some kind of action tonight.
I'll make a motion that we deny the request for extension this time. Ask our new zoning administrator to kind of work on it and find some answers for this young man, and maybe he can come bring it back at some point. We can discuss it.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Yep,
Clemish,
Well,
It's a
the,
motion to deny.
to deny, yep.
Why do I gotta go first? Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Schultz,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Harper.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Hopefully we can find another solution for you.
Can you give me any kind of guidance right now? Because I need to figure out.
Well, right now, we can't
No.
think of one.
No, but you can
That's
come
what
in
all the
tomorrow,
discussion has
come into
been
the
about.
office tomorrow and talk to the zoning administrator. He can help you out. You get it right.
We'll figure it out.
Right, thanks.
Thank you. Okay,
Where was the section that Sherry was talking about, more than 2 houses on the same property?
administrative items.
That there was an issue on where it was allowed in other districts in the other.
Well, I think
What are you looking for, Dennis?
Additional standards.
Sherry had talked about, when we were, a little bit on line of his there, where we were talking about two structures, two houses.
1503.
1503?
Did you guys have some administrative stuff?
You do have one item.
Just one administrative item to think about. I know it's come before you guys before. But I've had more questions about chickens in residential areas. This one in particular is, R2, I believe. So, the thought is, what direction do you want to head? Do you want to change that in the ordinance, or do you want to, or not change it in the ordinance at all, don't allow it? Or do you want people to come in and request that as a conditional use, especially in places like R2, R3, where it's not even a conditional use hobby farm, nothing is listed there. So what do we do with these people who are calling wanting chickens? I don't know.
I don't know of any way to give it to them without a conditional use at this time until we change it, is there?
And
What
it's not
control do we
listed
have
as
on
one.
less than one animal unit? In other words, there's so many chickens in an animal unit. Do we have any control at all below one animal unit?
Probably not.
And I believe it probably is one. Anything below is probably goes up to one.
So if you had one chicken, you're gonna consider that one, in other words, if there's.
Well, and part of our change to our animal things was, we were counting them as one animal is one animal, it's not, remember we talked.
You talked
we-
about that.
Yeah, and the changes that we're making, yeah.
But that
But I
was
didn't
in,
know right now.
yeah, it's tough.
I was just curious where we're at. If somebody says, hey, I still don't have an animal unit.
Yeah.
I got 6 chickens, but I still don't have an animal unit. You know, do we?
But it was, if that was that class G, or
Yeah.
whatever we were
Well,
talking.
yeah,
One
we were
to
talking.
200 is 1 to 200.
I mean, we have control over how many dogs they have. I mean, if an animal is, a chicken's a pet and not an egg, you know,
Cats.
cats, dogs,
Yeah,
rabbits.
you can have
Dogs
57
make more mess
cats.
than chickens do.
And people do, and people do.
Some people
And
do.
people do.
You know what I mean? I mean, if a chicken, if it becomes if it's a pet,
Yeah, but of course,
if you don't sell the eggs,
a chicken is considered an agricultural
yeah.
animal. A dog and a cat aren't.
Yeah.
That's the difference. I don't care if you pet them every day or not.
Maybe if it lives in your house.
And they're mean, actually.
If it lives in the house and never gets out,
There
then
you
probably
go.
fine. But
Yeah.
That'll be fine.
I don't know.
I guess
With all
I
the,
know this was brought up a while ago, and we kind of talked about, is there any way, home occupation, is there a way to spin it and whatnot? If we're willing to look at it that way and potentially, go get around some verbiage to make it work, I would be a proponent of just making it a conditional
Yeah,
use.
Yeah, because I know
In
people in
R1,
town
2,
that
I know,
have
they have
chickens.
chickens in
I
town.
think
I
it needs
think
to be a
we've
black
gotta
and white
find a
in the
way to
ordinance, though.
let people
Yeah, if
do
you're gonna
this.
do it, you
But
need
I
to
don't
add
think
it.
I would just
it's-
add it as a
I'm not sure why they want
CUP.
There's sure a lot of people that seem to want chickens. I don't know.
Yeah,
They
you
like
know,
the
mine are
fresh
good.
eggs
They're
and
not down
stuff.
for frozen water.
I would almost think something better than a conditional use, it would be number it and make it a permitted use, because if some lady, some kid wants 3 chickens, a
Yeah.
conditional use, that's $300 to
Well,
get.
Yeah.
certainly,
Yeah,
So
that's-
I'm
Dan,
thinking
that-
a permitted
Or a
use would be
permitted
better.
use
Certainly
under a
is.
certain number.
Yeah.
but how long is that
Like
gonna take? That's gonna take
6 or less. or
3
something.
months to get that
Yeah, yeah.
That's the problem.
in there.
Well, and then you also run into the issue like we did with the one that we did skirt around, basically, was they left here with not knowing they could do it or not, because they had covenants on their
Exactly,
property.
Right, on
exactly.
Riverside.
So we
Yeah.
can't really, if we put a permitted use in here and they think that they can have a chicken, and then they get out there and find out that they live in a,
Yeah.
a district that doesn't allow it, then it comes back.
Well,
Well,
that
well,
Well,
actually,
that's
not-
not under control.
That's
That's
not
not
our
our
problem.
control.
Yeah.
I think it's something we need to
They
look at, but I
have
think it's way
covenants
down
we-
on the priority list.
Well, of course,
I mean,
but-
so it's something.
You know,
What could be
isn't
is-
there some way we can ease it quickly?
if we're, making some of these
Something, a
low hanging
permit
fruit
somehow.
changes, it would be simply adding it as a permitted use or a conditional use, and
Well, we have that.
it's as simple as that, in my opinion.
We have that non-conformance stuff that we discussed that we still have to have a hearing for.
Right.
Would we want to put in conditional use for all of the, or permitted use? Like, something like chicken, I mean, do we want to, okay, somebody has chicken, then what about ducks?
Well, let's not
Yes, and-
complicate it. They're
Yeah.
asking for chickens, and that's the only problem we have right now. So
chick-
let's not overcomplicate.
Or we could limit it to hens, so that you don't have the roosters crowing all night
Well,
long.
yeah, just take what the city's doing and
Yeah,
copy
like,
it.
Well,
like
that's what I
6
did that
hens or
for.
5
What is the
hens or
city's-
whatever.
You can have like 6 laying hens, no
6 hens,
roosters.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
No
Well, I-
roosters.
What do you think, Gary? What have you
We,
seen?
we were discussing this just quickly, and we weren't going to address this tonight, but bees have come up as well.
Don't wanna talk
So,
about that.
I don't know what we want to do. But just so you know, there's other things out there that people are,
Yeah,
like.
Yeah, you can buy a little bee thing at Bumgar's, start your own bee house.
right.
Is that right?
You know, bees are wonderful. We got,
Bees are
everybody should
good
have
for
bees.
egg.
Not me.
That's important.
Depends if
We're
you're
not dealing
allergic
with
to
that
them.
one. It's a
I love
bee.
honey, but I get. the
Well-
bee
No, but our
stuff.
world,
Well, then they keep your.
our world
I think it
needs
kind of falls, and
They
I was
sure
gonna
do.
bring that up when you asked if we control under one animal unit. I was gonna say we don't
I mean-
specifically say you can't have bees either.
I just wish they wouldn't ask.
Are we, and most of these are, the county is kind of driven by complaints too. I mean, so unless somebody
Yeah,
has
but we
a whole
can't
bunch
give
of chickens
someone-
that are causing problems, I mean, do we even want to address,
Well-
do we even want to address it? To tell you that with everything else going on, is this going to be such a rare instance that, I mean, do we need to have?
Well, we've had
added
two in
zoning?
the,
No,
two in
but-
the last 2
Most
months.
people, but they've already
Yeah,
asked, we
Requests
can't
for
say.
chickens.
How often, Jessica? I mean, you say,
These are the only two, and then the bees, but,
oh,
I see it probably becoming, and if
If they
if
want
it's
them
getting
for
out
4-H or
there.
something.
I'll be willing to
They
bet
just
Oh,
want
that's
there's
what I think,
chickens
just the
out.
I think there's chickens
for
all
the
over the
eggs.
place
And I
out
think-
there. I know people have chickens out
Right.
there. It's
So
just
the
they
question
ask.
is, if
They
we
should
Yeah.
are
ask.
gonna get a request for enforcement on it, what's our answer gonna be? And we just as well address it now. My opinion. I mean,
Well, if the city lets them have like 5 or 6, we could let them have 5 chickens, hens.
6, I think it is, if I'm not
6?
mistaken. That's
Okay,
what I was
well,
thinking,
there you
was
go,
6.
half dozen hens.
I
To
think
me,
we
it's
just
just-
stay out of it
Stay
until
out of
it
it?
becomes an issue. You know, we got more pressing things to do.
well, I'm not in the camp with Donna. If no one would ever ask, it probably wouldn't have been a problem. But if you have people wanting to do the right thing and ask,
Well, we have
I don't think
bees and.
we can't tell them.
So
We can't tell them.
You can do it.
Go for it
Well,
and see
I'm
what
not
happens.
saying that, I'm not saying tell them go for it. It's just-
So if there's a complaint, let's say there's a complaint, somebody complains and says, my neighbor has chickens, where does that complaint go in the ordinance? In other words, what complaint do they use, what passage do they use in the ordinance to ask for any kind of relief or injunction from the county?
A nuisance.
Yeah.
That's what they would do. They would ask for a nuisance, you know, because, oh my goodness, I remember a short agenda and I thought, this is gonna be great, we'll get out early. And it was out by the lake, and these people argued for 3 hours over somebody having chickens. But then it came down to neighbors whose dog bit their chicken and they're fighting over dogs and chickens and oh my goodness. Yeah, I thought it was gonna be a quick night. It wasn't. It wasn't a quick night. But I think if we keep it to hens and not have roosters waking people up at 3 o'clock in the morning every day, it should be more reasonable.
Oh, shoot.
I don't think we spend a lot
Well-
of time on it. I think it's a question of, is it a permitted use or a CUP, and we just do it, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, this isn't designed to cover, the zoning ordinance isn't designed to cover every single thing.
Everything that could
I mean,
come
we
along.
don't
I want an
have,
ant farm.
we don't have, you know, how big, you know, a flag can be and, you know,
Kentucky
how many
and
cars you can park on your lot. I mean, where do, we can't regulate everything that people do. If it comes to an issue where we're getting 20 complaints a week on people with too many chickens, I think that's the time to do something about it. But until then, I guess I don't.
So what's the answer to the people
So
asking?
do you
Yeah,
just tell them
where
at this
does
point the
the-
county doesn't regulate chickens? I mean, they have
I
to
mean,
have something to
we
say.
don't. Do we regulate? We don't.
That's what I don't, I don't know that we can't say that, it's just that they need to know what they're gonna say.
There's nothing in our ordinance that says anything about chickens, either for or against.
Unless
We're
So is
neutral on chickens.
So is our stance if it doesn't
Wouldn't go quite that
specifically
far,
say
but I
you
think it
can't
does
do it in
mention
here,
Well,
you
it
can
does,
do
but
it.
it's a large number.
I mean,
Until
you know,
someone complains.
can I mow my yard? I don't see, like, me being able to mow my yard in here, can I do, I mean, where does it stop? That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. This is, of all the things going on in the county, this is
not,
small, and if it becomes an issue, then I say we address it at that point. Changing the zoning ordinance on chickens when we
Well,
have
then they're
accessory
gonna be coming in
structures and
with
everything
guineas
else.
and-
I just- I
Well,
don't-
we're already
All
changing.
All we have in our zoning at this point, the only thing we regulate is nuisance. If anyone, anywhere, I don't care if you're in an ag district or whatever, become a nuisance, then we address it, and then we regulate it, and then we get in there and we do something about it.
That's probably the way
The
to
nuisance,
handle it,
everything
yeah.
is, it's not regulated until it's a nuisance.
No, that's how
I wouldn't disagree with that.
Actually,
Yeah.
this is, maybe I'm way off base here, but this is actually all covered in hobby farm in the definitions.
But hobby farms aren't allowed in our.
We're
two.
talking
No,
about
but
residential.
it says right in there that activity carried out in rural residential areas. It doesn't say strictly ag district.
What page you on? So,
11.
11.
It says an activity
The
carried
definition.
out in rural residential areas, which includes planting, cultivating, harvesting, grain, feeding, raising of livestock, poultry shall be considered as part of a hobby farm if the area in which the livestock or poultry is kept is 1 acre or more in area for every 1 animal unit, and if such livestock does not exceed 10 animal units.
But see, a hobby farm is a conditional use in R1, but it's not allowed in R2 or R3. And then like R3, I think where that girl that came forward, I think was R3, and she didn't even have an acre, she might have a half acre, so then
Yeah.
what do you?
It's
did
one
that
But
get-
I guess, to me, the terminology rural residential areas is misleading then, because it doesn't designate just 2 ag district and R1. It
Right.
says rural residential area. Well,
Right.
R1, R2, and R3 are all rural residential
residential
areas.
areas, yeah. Yeah.
At one time, I thought it'd be as simple as just adding hobby farm to R2 and R3, but then you'd run into the
People.
1 acre, and the R3 is a half acre.
Yeah.
So then do you get a half an animal unit, or, what do you get a centaur living on your property?
Then you're gonna charge
I got
$300 when you get conditional use for a chicken or two.
I think this is something we just don't do. It's not covered in the ordinance.
Right.
Trees, if somebody came in and asked us, what about what trees can I plant? It's not covered in the ordinance, so.
Anything
What do
else
you
you
do with
want
your
to
chicken in
talk
town
about?
when it dies? You throw it in
All
the
right.
car, you drive out in the country and throw it around it.
I'm fine, I
Let
guess, as long
sleeping
as they under
chickens
1
lie.
acre.
There we go.
Okay, any more discussion on zoning ordinance changes, or have we taken care of that at any of the
That,
meeting?
well, that nonconformance that you brought up, John, that's something we want to, when I believe everybody was here on that, and we were all for it. Do we want to schedule a hearing?
We did, we ended up having it kind of tied in with the changes to 519 or whatever you'd want to call it that we did for Class F. The only thing that now, the changes that we talked about went all the way through 1609, and now I believe we need to remove part of 1611 because that's the part that led some people to believe that you had to have a conditional use or a variance. The second paragraph in 1611 that says, any use subject to the provisions of this section shall apply for a conditional use and receive approval prior to constructing, erecting, placing, or siting of structures directly associated with the identified conditional use, I believe is the part that's given them the problem, I guess I would say. And I think that could just be removed.
Just the second paragraph?
Yeah.
What about the things below that? Do you want to keep those too, or that?
Yeah, those are just, to me, they're explaining what the 3 different uses are. Wouldn't bother me if they weren't there, but I don't see that they heard anything. The other part of 1611 just says that any use which is permitted as a conditional use in a district under the terms of this ordinance shall be deemed a conforming use without any further action. And that's the way that we've actually done things. And it says that a conforming use of structure is entitled to the administrative and legislative provisions herein, which includes building permits and variances and conditional uses and all that kind of stuff. So when you're a pre-existing and you're something that would have been a conditional use in the district you're in, you're treated just like a principal permitted use. You're allowed all the administrative and legislative building permits, conditional uses, you're allowed to apply for all that stuff.
The second paragraph was the reason for the gazebos and the pergolas and stuff, is that what that was for?
Yes.
Okay. So
that's the part where
you
it
think
gets
just
kind of iffy.
Chopping that out of there. What are your thoughts on that, Gary?
I don't disagree that
Okay.
probably would be straight.
What do you think, Joe? I know we've talked about that one. What's your thought?
No, I agree. I mean, that was the paragraph that I was hung up on was, the first paragraph here, it says you're fine, and then the second paragraph.
It contradicts each other, it's really.
It kind of does.
Okay.
But we had a lot of that early on.
One thing, I think, Gary, you maybe mentioned, but, something I had thought about too is it a good idea for them to get the conditional use? Because let's say the setbacks in a commercial district, let's say your house is at a 10-foot setback from side yard or something, and then a commercial district says 150 foot or 75 foot, and do you need that conditional use to now, show that you don't have that setback? And I think we're okay because we're clarifying that, you can add on, you can do other things, you just can't further your
make your non-conformance any worse.
So I think we're covered, just getting rid of that.
Right.
I think, probably what we should do, as we move forward with this, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea for us to take the changes that we made to nonconformance and maybe run them past Gary, so he can compare the changed version of what we want in here, which I think does what we want, to what's there now, and then if you have any specific changes or concerns about what it does, because Joe had some concerns about, well, if you give them all the legislative and rights and everything, does that give somebody with a conditional use the ability to just expand and do anything? But it doesn't. It only gives them the right to ask for it. So anything that has to be added or anything like that, that's any other conditional use, you still have to come in and ask for it. The difference is what we had was the previous administrator was saying that a pergola was expanding a residential use, and it's just an accessory structure.
Right.
Accessory structure is an accessory structure. It doesn't matter what zoning district it's in. It's just an accessory structure.
Right.
If you're going to expand a residential use, it means you're adding another residence, or you're adding a multifamily residence or something.
Right.
Well, I would say, Madam Chairman, I'd say at least last time we discussed this, when you went through all this non-conformance, I would say maybe we have John and Donna and Healy meet with Gary and go over all of this stuff and make sure all they're on the same page. And if they are, we schedule this, email it out to us planning commission members. And if we're all okay, we schedule that for like a hearing for a zoning ordinance change. I guess that'd be another, because that one's pretty much done.
Yeah, and that's really a pretty
that'll
comprehensive
Yeah, that's just the
change
last
of-
little piece that everything you had.
Yeah.
Because we all, correct me if I'm wrong, everybody, but we all agreed on that last time it was brought
Right.
up, and that the only change would be the elimination of the section 1611
I would
second
remove this
paragraph.
table. I think that muddies the water.
Remove
too.
the table too? I'm
Okay.
fine with that.
But at least this is, because you guys had talked about not going in and making a little change here and a little change there, but this changes the whole article, 16. This,
And then it's done.
this cleans the whole article. It
Then
doesn't
it's
just go in
done.
and change a little
That's
part of
good,
it.
yeah.
Right.
And it clears up a lot of things that have caused problems lately too.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I guess I'd propose that those three meet with Mr. Vetter and,
Suppose you three meet.
I just,
He sure is good
Well,
about
you
throwing
had-
away
you-
our time.
Well, John spent a lot of time.
Well, John
sorting
knows the
through
most
everything,
about,
so-
about it.
The only other change that went with that was 207,
Oh, yeah, there's like a.
lot and parcel reduction prohibited.
Yeah.
That, you
Yeah.
know, that's been ignored since the first day. I mean, you
Yeah.
can't not reduce any lot or parcel in the county, or you can't do anything. You know, I never could figure what exactly the authors were thinking on that one.
That'd be another good
207, I believe that was, would be a part of that
Sorry.
also.
Well, you've worked on that section, that's why I thought it'd be a good idea to put you on
But I can certainly
Got
put
it.
that all down,
there.
put that all down in written form so that Gary can look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then turn it into him and then see if he wants to
Yeah.
discuss or
Yeah.
go anything through with us, we can.
And you guys have worked on
Get
that
it
one.
to him
the
and then
most.
let him
Let
review
him
it.
review
Sure.
it.
That sound all right? I'll just
Yep,
get it to you,
Yeah.
I'll get it to you in written form and then you'll see all the changes and you can compare them to what's there, and if you have any concerns, you can point them out.
Yep, sounds great. Okay, anything else?
Well, do we, when would we want to do the first reading for that? Would we want to do it at the next meeting, or would we want to do it sooner than that? I guess I ask.
For the 16.
For the, 16, would we want to do that?
You're not gonna get it any sooner. You got Thanksgiving, you
Sure. Yeah,
gotta
you're
get it in the
I'd say
newspaper, you gotta get it,
Oh, yeah.
you know,
Even maybe even January.
yeah.
We'll get there as soon as we can.
It's not gonna happen before the next meeting. I mean,
Yeah, you're right.
you're not gonna, gotta get it published.
You're right. You are correct.
The next meeting will be be the second week of December.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
That gives us enough time to
Review,
put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
sure. Okay, anything else before we ask for public comment?
Nothing for me.
All right, is there anyone on the list for public comment? Bill?
Hi, my name's Phil Taw. I live near Gayville. Welcome, Gary. Welcome to, wow, this meeting didn't end up exactly where I thought it was going to be. I thought all the commissioners were going to be here, so I had something for all of them. But two of you are here, and you need to hear some of this. And so while I welcome Gary, I don't envy Gary. This county is a mess. The lawlessness outside of this building is horrific. The building permits we've already talked about, the buildings are being built without permits, that are expired, and yet we try to do something. We complained since perhaps February and into July and August, and I'm not even sure letters have been out yet. I'm not sure what's going on, because we're not informed. And the anger that Ann Horton showed tonight, that's nothing. That's nothing to the hundreds of people out there who were affected by what's going on, and most of them don't even know. They call me and say, what should we do? I don't know what to tell you what to do, because it's a freaking mess out there. And there's more going on. There's at least 5 building permits contingent upon the fact that something might happen, and if something happens, then we're gonna build them and you gotta make us tear them down. Because they don't give a rip. 4 farmers, and the 5th one's an ex-commissioner doing crap in this county because they think they can. I'm pissed. There's lawsuits out there, and I'm on one of them, and I'm okay with that. But the county's on all of them as well. I still haven't got an answer from my request back in July to give the plaintiffs an answer to what the county did, what the county should have done, what the legal response is from the county. Not just me, not just Mr. Schenck, not just Mr. Johnson, not just Mr. Cutts, not just all the other respondents on the lawsuits. We deserve an answer. They deserve an answer. I disagree with them, but they deserve an answer. And we get nothing. Pitiful. with the things that are going on even tonight, that young man, the ghost of zoning administrators past is going to haunt that young man for freaking ever. Because in a year from now, there's an election, and you guys, or whoever else might be out on your ear, and you guys are out on your ear, and you don't have any idea what that guy's going to have to do in 3 years from now. And I agree, you can't do anything tonight. There's no such thing as an extension. Oh, but there was in the past, because that's what they did. Okay? Building permits expire, you come in to get a new one. You don't even have to pay for it. That's my understanding of the ordinance. I could be wrong, Mr. Vetter. Okay? But that's what we have to clear up. What I recommend is South Dakota Codified Law 11-2-10 be implemented immediately, and that is a temporary zoning controls enforced by the county, saying this is what we got, this is what we deal with, and we're going to make our changes, and we're going to halt everything that goes on from now on. You can do that for a year and have another year after that to fix everything. Because I've heard several things tonight. They're just crazy. Hobby farms, I'm with you. If you can do it in rural 1 or whatever, you should be able to do it all the way through ag. Nope. You got more property, you can't do it? Crazy. Didn't say that, right? But what do? People want to build? People want to have a hog farm? Fine. Let's make it clear when and where they're supposed to do it and how they're supposed to do it. The neighbors want to breathe clean air? Let's make sure they have that opportunity. Have that hearing here. I feel Ann's pain, Miss Horton. I wish I could help her. And I've tried. Several people have tried by filling out the right paperwork and handing it to the previous zoning administrator and the one who is temporary. We've done the paperwork. We want action. Even if you rule against us, okay, but we get nothing. Commissioners, do the temporary zoning controls and do them now. You have a 10-day notice to notify the public, have your meeting and put it in. What we have is what we have until you make changes. We need to put this whole thing to a referendum anyway. Don't even let the opposition to your changes, which will be reasonable, I know, because I know who you guys are. They're going to oppose it because they want to do what they want to do. Before you know it, they're going to say, the zoning, it doesn't matter. Some T wasn't crossed, some I wasn't dotted. Throw the whole thing out. That's what they're going to say. So declare what you have now legal and binding and make the changes you need to. We want answers for lawsuits. And along the way, you might as well put a moratorium on all those CAFOs and all the chicken farmers out there. We need to move forward. And we need to move forward together. I'm angry, but I'm angry for about 1,000 people behind me, at least. I know it took more than 3 minutes, but thank you.
Oh, it's fine. I forgot to turn on the timer. It was 5 minutes anyway. Go ahead. But put your name on the list afterwards for public comment if it isn't on there, please.
Patty Gramco. I have to echo what Phil was talking about. I have people asking me. I am not an on-the-spot person. I am one of those people that has to think about stuff to give them a reasonable answer. And people at church, people at Sunrise, where my mom lives, are asking me what's going on. I don't know what's going on. That young man, just so you know, that young man, Shrimp, do you remember a few years ago when that ICU nurse, and she was also a supervisor, died in the helicopter accident, and there was others? That's her son. He got a Garrity special. Nobody else in here will say it, but I will. What the hell is that kid gonna do? Something's got to happen. I can't believe the stuff I'm hearing. People are getting fined for, truck, semi-truck and trailer. They have trailers that they're using for temporary storage. They're getting fined for that. There's no ordinance for that. People see that as a really viable opportunity for storage because the storage places in town are outlandishly expensive. I don't know what to say to people. Can you put an article in the paper, please? Somebody write something up. I don't know what to tell them. Go into the zoning office. We now have a full-time administrator. Ask him. You know what they answer me? They say, I've been in there so many times, I can't stand to walk in the door anymore. Well, I don't know what I'm supposed to tell you. Why are they asking me in the first place? They're asking me because they're so frustrated they don't know what to do anymore. And they're angry. I actually could tell you names of people who are leaving Yankton County because they don't want to deal with the ordinances anymore. They're going to Bon Home. I know it's going to be a witch with a bee to do this, but somebody's got to do something because when you're losing population in a town that has had the same population since 1982, when I graduated there was 14,000. Guess what? It's still 14,000. We're not growing. People are leaving. I'm venting my frustrations to you because I don't know what to tell them. I feel like I'm on the spot. I have no answers for them. I guess the only other answer I can give them is call your commissioners. But that doesn't give them an answer. Those are my frustrations that I'm feeling in my little small world of church and Sunrise and home and all the places that I go. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moves.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?